Welcome back to another episode, guys. So we are talking about nighttime sleep apnea and nasal congestion. Part of this is because of me. Um, it's interesting because I definitely had sinus issues as a kid. I think it yo-yoed for many years. And then as we went through big life transitions post Quentin, our 4-year-old, it has intermittently come back, but come back with a bit of a vengeance at times to the point that like Nick is like, I'm not sleeping in the same room with you because you're snoring so loud. And so ironically, we ended up working with a couple of clients over time, but more recently a client with sleep apnea. And it got me kind of thinking about the connections, sleep apnea, major nasal congestion. And technically, what am I saying? In the mornings, for me, I tend to do a lot of my thinking time when I'm kind of like half awake, half asleep. It's when I have the most clarity. And I literally just like woke up one day and I'm like, subconscious suffocation. And I don't, I just was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what's happening. I am not able to process certain things that are in my subconscious, and it's literally causing me to suffocate at night. So anyway, I was like, let me research this. Let me dig into it and really understand if this is part of it. So we're shedding light on that. But before I go there, I do want to preface with this. Having sleep apnea, having chronic sinus congestion can have many different origins, and it can have a combination of origins. As I mentioned, when I was young and a teenager, I had a lot of sinus issues, and part of it was because I had major strep infestation between my tonsils and my sinuses. I had grade 3 enlarged tonsils that were never removed. I had tonsil stones. Those are all signs that you have bacterial infections or even fungal infections throughout sinuses and throat. So I want that to be very clear. Um, there are a lot of people that have strep colonies in their sinuses. They have mold colonies in their sinuses, which will contribute. People have parasites in their sinuses, not to totally horrify you guys. So these are all possibilities. A couple of ways for you to know, is there something physical happening? Is one, do you also have associated neck pain, especially in the mornings? Do you have a puffy face in the morning, puffy under the eyes? Do you have a frontal headache? Do you have low grade brain fog when you wake up that gets better about a half an hour to an hour upon waking, aka now you're in a vertical standing up position? This is a different podcast we can link in the show notes for you to listen to, which is talking all about how your brain detoxifies at night. And if it can't, because of inflammation in the brain, in the sinuses, congestion of the lymph nodes of your neck, there are practical solutions to that. One, we'll put the link in the show notes as well. There's an intranasal laser, red light therapy that we love that works like a charm for this, usually in conjunction with a series of nasal sprays, even eardrops, throat sprays. So there are 100% more physical and tangible things to do to help with sinuses and sleep apnea. But for those of you that have tried it and it hasn't worked, because that was me, I'm like the fucking nasal spray queen, red light up the nose, gua sha, lymphatic drainage to the neck. Like, I had Nick sticking his fingers in my throat to work on my palate to clear out the lymph, like the deeper lymph in the back of the throat, like done all the things. And I still was having congestion. And that was when I was like, what the fuck is going on?
And an easy way to think about it is if you're constantly working on healing the body and it's not healing,
Yes.
the body's not the problem. The mind is. So,
Which I think a lot of us hit that point and we'll say, oh, I bought the $5,000 sauna. Oh, it didn't work. Or I tried this with the doctor and it didn't work. Yeah, maybe the approach could have been better, but it's something you feel like really didn't even make the slightest bit of a change. It's not because that therapy, that technology, that protocol was shit and it sucked. It's because it's not the root cause. So, with that being said, my friends, the really interesting conflict, biological conflict associated with sleep apnea in particular, which is obviously more intense. You know, people with sleep apnea, uh, they stop breathing. They're literally suffocating. They usually have to have a CPAP device in order to, um, well, I should say they have to have a CPAP device in order to make sure proper oxygen is getting to the brain and also for their family members to feel comfortable that they're not going to die in the middle of the night. It's usually more
So if somebody's suffocating, how does one suffocate in life?
pressures, injected values.
No, like physically, like you're underwater and you're
Oh,
suffocating.
well, yeah, near death drowning.
No, 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 like you're trapped.
Oh, I was like, are you tricking me right now?
Not
Well,
trying to be
I
too
think
simple.
that's the thing
So,
is that just to be clear, this can be literal and this could be more symbolic. Like this could be that you had a near death experience, you had like you almost drowned and you went into like a shock from that experience that could play a role in changing the brain, which then can change the nervous system, which can then be a part of the sleep apnea issues. The thing is even if you had that near death experience, it's not just there, it's a neurological, psychological, and physical. Like it's all three. The same thing happens with what you just said is
well, it's
feeling
actually
trapped,
it's actually to make it simple, it's all emotional. Because you could have a
creating
near-death
the
experience.
cascade.
You could have a near-death experience like you're physically trapped underwater,
Mhm.
and that creates an emotional response.
Yes.
But it's the emotional response because they drowned every single Navy SEAL, and the Navy SEALs don't have sleep apnea. So it's the perception to the
Solid point, my friend.
responses to the moments in our life.
Yes.
Always. The mind dictates the body. Like I only can say this so concretely because it's the work that I do every single day with a bunch of people that constantly shows me this. And it still blows my mind that I'm like, holy shit, man. It's like, it's not that vitamins and working out and all these things aren't important, but it's not that
It's
important.
they're
It
secondary. They're
Yeah.
secondary or tertiary. That's the thing is I people say I don't have time to do all this, the vitamins and the therapies and meditate. And I'm like, then meditate.
And drink, distilled water.
You and your fucking distilled water.
So it goes back to broadly being trapped. Once you get into that feeling of being trapped, that you can get more specific on what your label is, what your exact sensation, feeling, emotion is. But you can be trapped, physically underwater. You could be trapped in a relationship. You can be trapped in a job. You could be trapped financially. You could be trapped being a mom or a dad. Like you can be trapped so many different ways.
And it's like
And
trapped is creating a like a choking response, like being
and
choked by the being trapped.
if you become a victim to
Yes.
that trap, then you start suffocating,
Yes.
like as if you were actually physically being held underwater.
Mhm.
And then the body has what? The exact same response,
Mhm.
gasping, not breathing, etc.
Mhm.
Which is like in my mind still
Isn't
just
it so
so
funny the
so
phrases
beautiful.
that we say though? Like if you're having we're entrepreneurs and like I remember there are times of just feeling like there's not enough fucking hours in a day. There's not enough people, employees. There's not enough and just being like I feel like I'm gasping for air.
There
It,
is no
it
time.
oh my God. It's just interesting the phrases that we say that actually hold so much more merit than we realize. And
Well,
you
it
know,
holds merit, but it's also, you get deep into that, and words are vibration, which when
well, yeah,
spoken, first there was the word of God.
that's
It
true.
creates the vibration, the resonance to attract us our reality. And this is why I get so specific sometimes with, people saying forgive or forget and all these things. It's like I understand what most people are saying, but they also don't understand that's a spell. Like you're literally casting a spell, which is like what media does, newscasters. Like it's all a play off of words and you can joke about it, but it's like newscasters are casting the information for the entire world to listen to, so they all have the same information so that they're casting a spell, the word, the
Casting a
vibration
mindset.
that attracts the resonance that lays the foundation of our reality. And it's like your self-talk does the same thing. Your perceptions does the same thing. And then you start speaking out that, oh, there's not enough of this in the day. And I'm choking, I'm gasping, I can barely breathe.
Mm,
Like you're 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 saying what you're feeling, and then the body goes through and it actually expresses what you've been saying and feeling.
yeah,
Sleep apnea.
yeah. But a lot of what we're talking about too is more in the conscious mind. And one thing I want to bring to people's awareness is that, when we get into the other side of the spectrum, which is, someone who maybe doesn't have full sleep apnea, but has like pretty significant nasal congestion, this is essentially it's like not wanting to smell something, not wanting to face something in life, and it's essentially being blocked from processing something emotional. And a lot of times this idea that I said in the beginning is of like subconscious suffocation, it's like you're not able to process something that is running in the background of your brain from a past experience. And this, in all of the time that I really took to think about this goes back to some topics that I've talked about in other podcasts, is that when you're using your pain or conflict, you're not always wanting or willing to process it. Because if you're using your anger in order to make you a better entrepreneur or make you more aggressive in the boardroom with negotiating deals, makes you a better salesperson. I love that your eyes are all over the place. I'm getting you thinking, haha. So if you're using it, you're not always willing, ready, or able to process it because it's no matter if you're using it, it's still holding you back in other ways. And this is essentially what's what's kind of ironic about it is that I used my childhood pain and experiences to go to school, become a doctor, open a business because the fear of being my parents was greater than the fears of taking all these risks of becoming, a business owner with essentially no money, the fear of failing, like that, the fear of being nothing was more intense than the fear of having a business that struggled or failed, etc. So I used it, and then I felt like it was holding me back. And the peak of my fucking sinus congestion was when we lived in South Carolina, which was the pivot point where we closed the brick and mortar of Integrative Wellness Group, our first business, and we transitioned to a virtual model and moved to South Carolina. And essentially, in that process, what I said was what got me here in my life and my career, all of the leveraging of the pain that I had from the past will take me no further. But that didn't mean that I knew what to do. That didn't mean I had tools. That didn't mean anything. It was just the start of my journey. And so I started this process of uncovering all the shit that was no longer serving me. And I was congested for almost a fucking year because I was having such a struggle of letting go of those experiences and those challenges and that pain, because even though they were holding me back in certain ways, they also served me for more than a decade of my life.
Yeah. Smells, the nasal passages are very interesting. Um, do you care if I get a little deep on like the
Do you even
specifics of
need to
it?
preface with getting deep anymore? Just go there because that's what you do.
The so neurologically, your left nostril is connected to ipsilateral brain, so your left cortex, right is right. Um, so usually people will have more of a congestion on one side, not usually both, which means that there's a hemisphericity issue. And then you look at new dramatic medicine, it goes deeper, left-handed, right-handed, mom, partners, etc. Uh, but when you look at that, so there's a hemisphericity imbalance of how we're perceiving that moment of where we got congested, suffocated. And with that, there's the beautiful part of the nasal pathway is, an easy way to think about it is breath. Breath is your life force.
Mhm.
So you're moving your life force around. So there's a disconnect with who you authentically are, and you feel trapped, and that trappedness isn't allowing you to be you. And when you can't be you, you suffocate. You can't breathe.
Mhm.
The other beautiful part of the nasal pathway is its smell. And most people don't use or are consciously aware of, you know, using their smell to guide them. We use touch, we use visual, we use auditory, but smell is one of those senses that we haven't, as a society, really worked on um, using to serve ourselves. But when you think about smell, it's, like dogs, they sniff out danger. So a lot of times, smell is the
Mhm.
sense that's connected to our gut, our instincts,
Mhm.
or our impulses. And that's going back to, you know, when did this occur? Because now an instinct is something that I want to protect myself from. I don't want to experience pain. Impulse is something that I want to experience pleasure. So depending on that moment and how the brain, depending on which part of the nostril, left brain or right brain, and with handedness and how we're wired, is it drives us to be able to take that information to more clearly see the root cause. And when we can get that root cause, we can intelligently go and rebalance the perception so that the benefits and drawbacks are equal, and that sets us free
Well,
from
I
the
find
mind.
this really interesting the way you just put that, because one of the primary ways to help your body recover and process sleep apnea, chronic nasal congestion is a vasovagal reset and hypnosis. And so what you just described, the vagus nerve, it starts in the brain, and then it innervates the heart, the lungs, and the gut. And so, there's a lot of talk about people, or a lot of talk, especially on social media, at least in my algorithm, people talking about this polyvagal system, the vasovagal reset, and how this is what we need to do to regulate our nervous systems and get out of the fight or flight. And yes, that is true, because if you are in more of a sympathetic anxiety, fight or flight, overdrive state, yes, you can have more constriction in your airways 100%. But the same thing goes is if there's something that you don't want to smell or something that stinks, like metaphorically about life, or something you're feeling suffocated by, then you're going to have a different root cause to your vagus nerve issue. Your vagus nerve, it's not just about doing vagus nerve exercises or doing you know vagus nerve like different therapies like red light or PEMF to target the vagus nerve. This is about what is affecting what's the root cause that's affecting the vagus nerve.
Well, it's,
And
I look at it just to kind of build off what you're saying is I look, energy is bidirectional. So it's like if the vagus nerve has been so fucked up for so long because the vagus nerve should be pretty much, healthy, half parasympathetic activation, half sympathetic activation. It's one
Mhm.
of those weird cranial nerves that actually does works on both. But too much of anything is detrimental. It's bad for us.
Yes.
So if it gets stuck in the sympathetic, well, it's kind of like the use it or lose it process. You know, it actually, we need to train it physically to be more parasympathetic. So those reset technologies, et cetera, everything, breathing, smelling through, because we can activate it in a lot of different ways. Gagging reflex helps kind of reset it, gargling, humming. Like there's a lot of different tools one can use. But if you're not taking the stress off of it and it's constantly putting it back into a sympathetic state, like, what the fuck are we doing? We're just wasting a bunch of time.
Yeah. Because I've had vagus nerve issues for many years and they were very, very, very bad at a certain point in time where it was causing me to faint. Uh, and I was able to stabilize it, but the true remedying of all vagus nerve symptoms didn't happen until I was able to go through and process the major aspects that were creating the sinus issues, which was the root cause. And, and part of for me is I've done some work with you, I've done some work with your colleague David, and then I've done my own meditation, but a lot of my meditation was able to be, I would say, more effective because of the work that I've done with you, the work that I've done with David as well. Um, but all kind of putting myself in that hypnotic state was a big part of the subconscious processing because I was not able to, you can't always process subconscious things on your own. We had an intermission. Here
So, as always, it's for me, it's just this is why it's my favorite quote. The quality of your life is dictated based off the quality of the questions you ask. So it's like if we're feeling a symptom, because we're going to get feedback from the body first, or usually be aware of it in the body. And it's like you have sleep apnea or you have nasal congestion, something like that in that world. There's some form of being trapped, suffocating. Okay, this is with my nose. It's connected with breath. Breath is a life force of who I am, circulating that throughout the body. So there's an aspect in one of the categories of life where I'm not really being me. Let's be honest with myself. Let's go through different categories of life. Is it the relationship? Is it the social? Is it the spiritual? Is it the vocational? Is it financial? Like, let's look at all the different buckets and say, like, where am I not being authentic? Where am I feeling suffocated? And how can I start being more of who I truly am?
hmm
Because that's the only way to change. And when we start becoming more of that, we free ourselves. We're not trapped, and we're not a victim to that symptom anymore because the congestion, the sleep apnea, it's not bad. It's actually a necessary feedback mechanism so that we can serve ourselves, so that we can get awareness and reflect on that awareness and use that to better serve ourselves. And that's the beauty of quote unquote every symptom, every disease is that none of it's bad.
Hmm.
It's all just a feedback mechanism for us to be a better version of who we truly are.
Yeah.
And and when we can do that, then we can tap into also the physical side of this probably created a brain imbalance in my left hemisphere. So let's do some neurological exercises to strengthen that. And let's start smelling into that to strengthen that neural pathway. And let's start doing some vasovagal exercises to help tonify that. Like there's so many different things we can do, but it all comes back to the quality of the questions we start asking ourselves.
And it's also not about what you do, it's how you do it. And that's the thing that people need to understand is that, when you are a self-researcher and you want to go ahead and look at, oh, this podcast makes a lot of sense. Let me figure out on my own what do I do for my, my vagus nerve and my sleep apnea. And then, you have a series of different things. Oh, you can do this, you can do that, you can meditate, you can, do this supplement, you could do this activation, you could do it's not that anything is not good or great. It's more so what do you need? What is your hierarchy? What is going to give you the best outcome with the most limited amount of resources. And, I don't say that in a bad way. I just mean, we all want to be more time efficient and energy efficient.
The
And you can only,
downside to being a human is that we're all unique, so there's not one protocol that works
yes,
for everybody.
yes, yes, yes. And it's also, too, I invite you to also know that you don't always have to figure it all out on your own. It took me a really, 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 really long time to ever say, I don't think I can figure this out on my own. I just kind of felt like that was my duty as a person. If I'm a strong person, I can figure it out. And it really wasn't until 2022 that I was like, I'm stuck and I can't figure this out and I need help. And that really was a huge catalyst to my biggest leaps in personal development. So just know that you don't have to do it on your own. And even if it's someone who could just help probe better questions for you to see things that maybe you haven't seen before, that is going to be massively impactful and really help you with the outcomes that you desire. All right, guys.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
See you on the next one.